Welcome to Talk with John, your trusted space for real stories and smart advice for life after 60. I'm 70 years old, and for over 40 years, I've had the privilege of doing work that I believe is my mission. Listening, accompanying, and helping those entering their later years to better understand themselves, both physically and mentally. And I know one of the most subtle and hard to express feelings after retirement is loneliness. You might live in a well-equipped home, surrounded by children and grandchildren, or have longtime friends nearby, but still feel a deep emptiness within. It's as if life, once filled with laughter, work, calls, and constant movement, now feels like an empty space. I used to believe all I need to do is call a friend, visit someone, and I'll be fine. But then I realized there were times when visiting friends, every time I felt lonely, only made me lonelier. Why is that? Today I'll share with you 5 important reasons, based on my own experience and the hundreds of people I've talked to, why visiting friends after retirement can make loneliness worse and hurt emotional. 1. One-sided emotional dependence. When I first retired, I found that life suddenly became empty. No more meetings, no more full schedules. And I started calling and visiting old friends whenever I felt down. At first, it seemed reasonable. People need connection. But when this behavior becomes a habit every time you feel lonely, you're unknowingly placing the responsibility of making you feel okay in someone else's hands. And that's the beginning of wearing down your inner strength. I once met Mr. Gerald, a 72-year-old kind man who was very affectionate. After he retired, he began visiting his friends regularly, calling them every night, hoping to chat and fill the emptiness. At first, everyone was happy to see him, but gradually they answered less and less. Gerald started to feel pushed away, and his loneliness grew even deeper. This story isn't rare. Research from the University of Chicago shows that feelings of loneliness are not dependent on how many people you see, but rather on how well you connect with yourself. When you don't feel enough on your own, you look for it externally. But that comfort is often only temporary. The danger here is that it turns friendship into temporary pain relief rather than a healthy connection. When you hope someone will fill the gap inside you, you're inadvertently giving them control over your mood, and that makes you even more vulnerable. The more you depend on others to feel okay, the more fragile you become, because when they aren't around, you'll feel empty. So what's the solution? Don't worry. No one is telling you to isolate yourself. Instead of running to others every time you feel empty, try doing something small for yourself. Brew a cup of coffee slowly. Take a walk in the park without your phone, or write a few lines about how you're feeling. Those little things are the first bricks in rebuilding your inner strength. I'm not saying you should live in isolation. Social connections are important, but let those connections start from a place of inner fulfillment, not from the need for someone else to fill the void. Dr. Susan Pinker, author of The Village Effect, emphasized that social bonds are vital, but the ability to regulate our own emotions is the foundation for creating meaningful connections. Because the most important friend in this stage of life is you. 2. Different life rhythms. When you visit friends without considering their life rhythms, you might be unintentionally creating distance in a relationship you deeply cherish. I still remember a conversation I had with Marilyn, who was 69 years old. She retired early and lived alone in a small apartment on the outskirts of town. She told me that a few months after retiring, she began visiting her best friend, Lorraine, who was still working part-time and taking care of her grandchildren 3 days a week. At first, Lorraine was very happy to see me, Marilyn said, but after a while, I noticed she started avoiding me. Her messages became shorter. The door was rarely open. I didn't understand what I had done wrong. Then Marilyn went quiet when I asked, "Did you visit when you needed to, or when she could receive you?" This is one of the biggest paradoxes after retirement. You have more free time than ever, but not everyone in your circle of friends is living on the same schedule. According to a study by the National Institute on Aging, the mismatch in daily rhythms between retirees and those still working is one of the top reasons friendships begin to fade after the age of 60. It's not that the emotional bond weakens, but rather that time and expectations no longer align. Do you know? When you visit someone unexpectedly just because you are feeling lonely, you may unknowingly put pressure on them. Not because they don't care about you, but because they are stretched thin between work, family, and their own emotional needs. I've experienced this personally. After I retired, I once drove 20 minutes to visit an old friend. He had just dropped off his grandson at school, still holding a half-drunk coffee cup. When he saw me, he smiled, but his eyes looked a little confused. We talked for a while, but I could sense it. I had arrived at the wrong time. And I learned an important lesson that day. Real connection doesn't come from being available at any time, but from knowing when to show up and showing up with consideration and understanding. Take some time to create your own rhythm first. A morning routine that's gentle and relaxed. A community group that you engage with weekly. A new hobby to explore and rediscover yourself. When you have your own rhythm, you won't feel the need to force yourself into someone else's. And then those meetings with friends will be less about filling the void and more about sharing meaningful moments. Because friendship at this stage of life, if you want it to be sustainable, needs to be nourished with respect for each other's pace, not by the pressure of always being available. Hidden emotional triggers, unexpected painful memories. When you meet up with old friends, sometimes you're not just meeting the past, you're encountering emotions that haven't been healed yet. One thing I've noticed after retiring is that meeting up with old friends isn't always easy. You think you're simply catching up, sharing life stories. But sometimes these encounters leave you feeling heavier instead of lighter. This is something I witnessed with Sam, an old friend who had retired 2 years ago. He and his friend Paul had worked together for 25 years and continued to meet once a week after retirement. Initially, their meetings were enjoyable, but gradually, Sam started feeling uncomfortable during their conversations. Every time we meet, Paul brings up the old days, the old work, past accomplishments. It feels like I'm reliving things I've left behind, Sam told me one quiet afternoon. And I immediately understood that feeling, caught between the past and the present. Paul was still living in the past, while Sam was trying to adjust to a new life, one no longer connected to the old job. Conversations about past achievements and successes kept flooding their meetings, making Sam feel like he hadn't truly overcome this major life change. This, according to a study by the Institute of Gerontological Psychology, makes perfect sense. When we enter retirement, most of us are faced with the task of reinventing ourselves. We have to give up a significant part of our identity, the job, the career. Meeting up with old friends and constantly reminiscing about the past can make us feel stuck there instead of moving into the future. So how can we overcome this? First, ask yourself, what do I want when I reconnect with old friends? Do I want to feel joyful like the good old days? Or do I want to share and accept the changes with each other? I've learned that meetings with longtime friends don't always have to center around the past. Instead, I started asking them about the new discoveries in their lives after retirement. This made the conversations feel lighter, and the connection became easier because it no longer depended on comparing the past or measuring our worth through past achievements. When you accept change, you'll find that even painful memories can be part of the healing process. You don't have to reinvent yourself all at once in a single meeting, but you can start sharing your journey openly and gently. Because sometimes accepting change and opening yourself to new experiences is what truly allows you to live fully in this stage of life. 4. Social fatigue and superficial conversations. When you think meeting up will solve loneliness, but only makes you feel empty. One thing I've realized clearly after retirement is that not every meeting can cure loneliness. In fact, sometimes sitting across from someone and engaging in shallow conversation can make me feel even lonelier. Conversations that revolve around the weather, family, or small daily events may seem like they're alleviating loneliness in the moment, but afterwards, they leave you feeling empty, as if you weren't truly understood. I remember one encounter with my longtime friend Jean. She's always been cheerful, but every time we met, her conversations would focus on the usual, how I raised my kids, or the things I bought this week. Occasionally, I try to open up about deeper emotions, like the sense of emptiness I felt after retirement, but she would just respond with a few lighthearted anecdotes and a chuckle to brush off the atmosphere. I felt like I wasn't really being heard, just a participant in a conversation out of obligation. I'm sure you've been in a situation like this too. Sitting across from someone, trying to connect, but only receiving shallow exchanges that fail to offer the understanding you crave. The truth is, the presence of someone else doesn't always solve loneliness. Sometimes it can make it worse. According to a study from Harvard University, this phenomenon is called social fatigue. It happens when social encounters lack authenticity and understanding, leaving you feeling unheard and deepening your sense of isolation. I'm not saying that meeting with friends is wrong. On the contrary, social connections are vital. But when you feel lonely in your own life, seeking connection from people who can't truly read your emotions might drain you rather than help you. The truth is, you need deeper conversations where you can share your true feelings and be met with sincere understanding. This doesn't mean you should cut ties with old friends, but I've learned that proactively seeking out relationships with depth, where you can share what really matters, helps reduce the emptiness. One of the strategies I've started implementing is joining community groups or volunteer activities where I can connect with people who share similar interests and who can listen and share with genuine care. These interactions not only bring something fresh into my life, but also help me feel more meaningfully connected. Don't let shallow conversations leave you feeling more disappointed. Instead, seek out people who can share about things that truly matter to you. When you can converse from heart to heart, you'll find that life feels more meaningful and your loneliness will feel a lot lighter. If you're still watching and finding these insights helpful, please feel free to leave a comment below. I'd love to hear how you feel about these thoughts. If you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you do so now so you don't miss out on future videos, where I'll continue to share valuable stories and lessons on how to refresh your life after retirement. Next, we'll move on to part 5, where we discuss how to face personal growth during retirement and find new opportunities for change and development. 5. Missed opportunities for personal growth after retirement. When retirement hits, many of us look to soothe loneliness and seek connection through friends. At first, meeting up with old friends can bring joy and comfort. But there's something I've learned after experiencing these months of downtime. Too many social visits can lead you to miss out on profound opportunities for personal growth. I vividly remember the story of my friend Linda, who was always quick to turn to friends when feeling lonely after retirement. At first, seeing old friends helped her feel connected, but over time, she realized she had no time for her own hobbies, no room to try new things, and no space to develop new skills. The casual, aimless chats, the mindless gatherings, all became repetitive and eventually robbed her of the chance to rediscover her personal passions and invest in self-growth. According to a study by Harvard University, while loneliness can harm health, leaning too heavily on others to solve that loneliness can actually hinder us from growing emotionally and developing a sense of independence. Without enough space to focus on personal growth, we miss out on precious opportunities to learn, evolve, and discover new aspects of ourselves, something that becomes even more critical as we step into retirement. Every time you meet up with friends just to fill the void, you're temporarily ignoring the important task of creating a meaningful and independent life. The time spent visiting friends could instead be valuable time spent enriching your own life, whether by reading, learning a new language, trying out a new sport, or even volunteering. Don't get me wrong, friendship is essential, but if you don't carve out time for yourself, you might miss the chance to develop personal interests and passions that will enrich your life in meaningful ways in the years to come. Instead of seeking your friends every time you feel lonely, dedicate time to yourself. Start a new habit, try learning something fresh, or simply spend an afternoon sitting quietly and reflecting. By giving time to yourself, not only will you enrich your life, but you'll also become a better friend to yourself and those around you. Consider this. Could you create a new, richer, and more fulfilling life by not relying too much on social visits to ease your loneliness? Give yourself the chance to grow, and you'll find that as you become stronger emotionally, you'll bring real connection to the people around you. So through the insights shared today, I hope you realize that while friendships and social connections are important, leaning too heavily on them to fill your loneliness might cause you to miss valuable opportunities for self-development. Remember, you deserve an independent, strong, and meaningful life, even when no one else is around. Taking time for yourself, nurturing your mental well-being, and learning new things are the keys to living fully and happily throughout your retirement years. If you found this video helpful and think someone else could benefit from these insights, don't hesitate to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. That way, you won't miss any future videos filled with valuable information to help you live a healthier and happier life at any age. Thank you for watching until the end. Keep journeying with me, and I hope you have a truly fulfilling, free, and meaningful retirement. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss the next video. This is the Talk with John channel.